Hey, what's up, guys? You're now listening to Devo with Uncle Theo. Today is day 75, and we're going to cover Joshua chapter 9 and 10. The last place we left off, Israel won the battle at Jericho and at Ai, and now they're about to encounter a people called the Gibeonites. And it says in verse 1, "Now it came about when all the kings who were beyond the Jordan, in the hill country, in the lowland, and on all the coasts of the great sea toward Lebanon, the Hittite and the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Perizzite, the Hivite and the Jebusite heard it all, and they gathered themselves together with one accord to fight with Joshua and with Israel." Now listen to this in verse 3. "When the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and to Ai, they also acted craftily and set out as envoys and took worn out sacks on their donkeys, and wineskin worn out, and tore and mended, and worn out and patched sandals on their feet, and worn out clothes on themselves, and all the bread of their provision was dry and had become crumbled. They went to Joshua to the camp at Gilgal and said to him and to the men of Israel, 'We have come from a far country. Now therefore make a covenant with us.' And it says in verse 14, "So the men of Israel took some of their provisions and did not ask for the counsel of the Lord. Joshua made peace with them and made a covenant with them and let them live. And the leaders of the congregation swore an oath to them." And so what's happening here is all of the people of the land are getting together and unifying to destroy Israel because they know how powerful they are. But the Gibeonites took a different approach. They said, "We're not going to join with everybody. We're going to come up with our own crafty plan to act like we're foreigners from a land and ask Israel to spare our lives so that we can live here." But they were natives of the land that God told them to utterly destroy. And by not destroying these people, they can't fully conquer the land because they made an oath that they can live and stay. And verse 14 gives us a hint. It says, "For they did not ask the counsel of the Lord." And immediately we go into our practical application. The second generation is awesome. God is with them. He's fighting for them. They had no casualties to the battle of Ai, and they're moving forward with fierce power with the Lord on their side. But they make a small misstep, which comes with grave consequences. They forget to seek the Lord one day. And just think about that. The great momentum they have, what you spend a lifetime building, can be destroyed overnight. God killed off the first generation. It took 40 years. He raised up this generation, and they fall because they don't seek the Lord one time and get deceived by people. And this should encourage us to tell us we can never always have it all together. We can never slip up and not depend on the Lord because somebody is plotting against us at all times, namely Satan. And sometimes there's human plotting going on, and we don't know it behind the scene. They're moving and shaking. They're studying you. They're looking at your patterns and your proclivities and what moves you and your weaknesses, your vulnerabilities. They're looking to catch you slipping. And the only thing that can save you from it is through deep communion and fellowship with the Lord who knows all things because you don't. And we saw some stress fractures with the people wanting to stay on the other side of the Jordan. Reuben, Simeon, and the half tribe of Manasseh. Now those cracks are getting larger. They didn't seek the Lord here, and it comes back to bite them because the Gibeonites hold a very critical part in the land called the CBP, the Central Benjamin Plateau. It's like a hub in the center that connects all of the cities. And by not getting this area, you can't fulfill the conquest if you let these people stay here. And they've made an oath, to do it. So, beloved, continue to metaphorically circumcise yourself every morning, seek him, and don't forget to do it because the moment that you do, it costs you everything. In chapter 10, 5 kings come to attack Gibeon, and this is our southern campaign. Remember, central, southern, then northern. So these kings come together. They recognize this weakness, but God says in verse 8, "Do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not one of them shall stand before you." So Joshua came upon suddenly by marching all night from Gilgal. So he has to go from Gilgal to Gibeon. And some people estimate that have done the research on this is about a 5 to 7 hour hike overnight uphill. And so when they get there, of course, they're going to be tired and not wanting to fight. But God helps fight for them. It says, look at verse 10. It says, the Lord confounded them before Israel, and he slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon. And as they fled, the Lord threw large stones from heaven as far as Azekah, and they died. And there were more who died from the hailstones than those whom the sons of Israel had killed with the sword. God fights for them. God is raining hailstones from heaven while they're fighting on the ground. Show me a better picture of the Lord fighting for his people. And it says God killed more people from heaven than they did on the ground. And I remember how my professor used to put this. He said God was the first sniper. How snipers sit in towers and they take out people in the military. Well, God was sitting in heaven with his rifle and he was aiming hell at Israel's enemies. And you got to think about the skill and the calculation of that. First is coming from heaven, which is a many-mile drop. The people have to move in battle before the hail gets to them. So God makes the precise calculation to make the hail hit his enemies, even though they're moving. So he has to anticipate what move they're going to make. And he has to anticipate what move Israel is going to make so he doesn't hit his people. Think about the skill in that. Let's not forget that God is our first sniper. And they have this victory. In fact, it says that the sun stands still at Gibeon. And this is actually a text many theologians debate over. And in fact, many scholars who are against the faith argue for the inaccuracy of the Bible here because they say that the sun can't stand still because it's always still. The planets rotate around the sun, not vice versa. And so they would say this is a misunderstanding of the solar system. It used to be knowledge and people thought that the sun revolved around the planets. And when we found the opposite to be true, it changed people's thinking, just like when people thought the earth was flat and it came about that wasn't true through research, which we have a new movement now with flat earthers who say that's absolutely not true. But that's a subject for another conversation. I wanted to give that to you in a few ways that scholars have tried to solve that. One, they say this is poetic language, saying that it's not literal. Another one was this was a language of observation. It just seemed like the sun stood still as they fought the battle. And the last position is that it was miraculous that Joshua actually commanded the sun and the Lord caused the sun to obey Joshua. And this is where I tend to land. And they have this victory. And look at how they slay these kings. They bring them all out. In verse 24, they tell them to come near, put your feet on your necks of these kings. So they came near and put their feet on their necks. Then Joshua said to them, do not fear, be dismayed, be strong and courageous. And thus the Lord will do to all your enemies whom you fight. So afterwards, Joshua struck them and put them to death and hanged them on 5 trees. Think about the power in that. Joshua is teaching his people how to be courageous in the fight and to lead and to further show them that they're going to conquer this land and God fights for them. But we have a problem with the Gibeonites, and this tells us that this probably isn't going to work out well. But they're really going to conquer a lot of land, but they won't fulfill the conquest. And we need someone to do that. And his name will be Jesus Christ. Let's continue to trek through Joshua. Talk to you next time.